So I wanted to talk a little bit about the subject. No one has really focused in on it, but Nintendo could be found guilty of violating copyright law. Now you might say, well, how the heck is that possible? Well, Nintendo has been on an absolute rampage. You know, Yuzu has basically been taken down. That's an emulator that a lot of people use to play games, and it was essentially the only emulator that was like I think it was available on Steam. It was widely available. And Nintendo basically took it down under the argument that Yuzu uses the encryption keys that grant access to these games, and that's illegal enough itself, and it tells people how to go and obtain them. Keep in mind, Yuzu doesn't actually provide the encryption keys themselves, although they do tell people how to get the encryption keys. And these are legally obtained encryption keys as well. But Nintendo's like, nope, not going to happen. And Yuzu agreed to pay $2.4 million as a part of a settlement and not distribute the software anymore. And of course, Nintendo has very deep pockets. Right now, it's insane what's happening with attorneys in Western society. Elon Musk, his pay package was something like $50 billion. He basically met his obligation in terms of growing Tesla, and that amount was his package was thrown out. This judge in Delaware said, "Oh, we're not going to honor that. You should, that's too much." Keep in mind, Elon Musk delivered everything he said he would, but the judge said that no, CEOs should not be allowed to be paid this much. Many of you will say, "Oh, you're absolutely right. He's absolutely right. CEO, there should be a cap on the amount that you're allowed to earn." But here's the thing: if you deliver specific results, you're entitled to what you get paid. If you say, "Okay, well, I'm going to grow this company into a $1 trillion company, and if I do this in a certain period of time, my compensation is going to be $50 billion," and someone goes, "That's impossible," and you do the impossible, and now it's time to pay up. Sure, your reward is large, but what you've done is massive. Now, here's where things get interesting. After this happened, the attorneys that were involved in the case then said they wanted to be paid $6 billion, which is the normal thing to be done, because usually whenever a settlement like this, whenever a case like this occurs, they basically get like a percentage of the amount. So because he was supposed to be paid like $56 billion, they're supposed to get $6 billion from Tesla now. $6 billion. Tesla is supposed to pay them the lawyers who prevented Elon from getting paid. They're supposed to get $6 billion, and that kind of just shows you how messed up the U.S. system is. So I use that as an example to explain why Yuzu probably settled for so much money, because ultimately, if they tried to go up against Nintendo's more than happy to spend $100 million to fight them. Nintendo has the money, and they'll just keep on spending. They won't even get that far, but they have the money on hand, and they'll just keep spending and spending and spending, irregardless of the law. Well, guess what? Nintendo could ultimately be found guilty of violating copyright law, because copyright law allows gamers to back up their games and back up their media. This is something that is a big part of it. If you legally obtain any form of media, be it music, video games, movies, television shows, you have the right under copyright protection to make backups, not to distribute them, but to make backups for your own use, for archival purposes, as well as for just in case, and this has not changed. So of course, Nintendo is arguing, well, if you can't access our software if you don't have the encryption keys, and if you're using the encryption keys, that were obtained, regardless if they were illegally obtained or not, it doesn't matter, because we didn't make them available, so you had to go in and illegally get them. Guys, this is where Nintendo, they're trying to avoid consumers having access to their games, having access to their titles, being able to play their games. Now, if we look at what copyright law says regarding this, so archival copies under section. All right, so let's explore the legal aspect of making copies of video games you own under U.S. copyright law. Archival copies under Section 117 of the Copyright Act it is generally legal for an individual to create archival copies of video games they own. These archival copies are intended for personal backup purposes and are not meant for distribution or resale. What parts of a video game are copyrightable? Video games consist of various components, each with different copyright protection. Copyright code, the underlying code, the artwork, sound. So basically, these are things that you can make copies of. Digital millennial. So I mean, guys, remember, while making personal backup copies is generally allowed, piracy, illegally distributing or copying games is considered a federal crime in the United States that can lead to legal consequences. Now, when we say copying games, that copying games that you do not own. So, for example, if games are being illegally distributed, if you copy a game and illegally distribute it, then that's illegal. But as we said at the very beginning, making copies of video games you own, all right, under U.S. law, is legal. Okay, this is generally all right. Is generally legal for individuals to create archival copies of video games they own. So you can legally create copies of your games if you own them. Nintendo is saying that if they are using methods to prevent you from making your copies, that it is illegal to bypass those methods and make copies and make copies of the media that you own and access. And they're also arguing it's illegal to access your copies, to play the software that you've legally obtained, because they're not allowing you because you're breaking their code. This is out there. What they are trying to do is to circumvent your ability to access your media. It's very unlikely this would stand up in court. Let's check out this other video, because this is interesting. This comes from Moist Critical, and he basically starts going on about the privacy issue as well.
I bet the majority of you watching this can't even tell that I have a tummy ache right now, but I'm being very brave about it. I'm going to push through, and I want this to serve as a lesson to all of you that you can't tell what someone is going through just by taking a glance at them. Don't judge a book by its cover. There's two topics that I'd like to discuss today, so let's dive right into the first one, which has become a very big discussion across the internet, which is in regards to piracy. I like to think I've been very vocal about my stance on piracy. I don't think there's any questions on where my loyalties lie when it comes to this subject, but I'll repeat them again, screaming from the mountaintop. I, with my hand on a stack of Bibles, subscribe to the belief that Gabe In preached. Piracy is a service problem. Not only that, but the quest to defeat the boogeyman known as piracy also leads more people to it. So introducing harsh DRM that tanks performance or makes a game function worse will inevitably lead more people to go to the pirated version, because it is a better version of it, because it runs better without the DRM that you've introduced to try and fight it. So you're creating more of a piracy problem by trying to solve it. I also just truly believe that if you just focus on making a good product or service, you should never put even an iota of thought into how to beat piracy. Yes, people are going to pirate it. They're going to find ways of circumventing shit no matter what it is. But there will be far more people that legitimately purchase it to support that good product or service and that effort that you made to not ruin it with DRM or fighting against piracy and making things an inconvenient headache. To put your titties where my mouth is, I am well aware that our comic book series Godslap has tons of re-uploads of our entire comic series accessible for free right now. And you know what we're doing to stop it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, we've made it easier by offering a digital version of our comics. For those that don't know, I have a comic book series called Godslap and another one called Plague Seeker. We offer a digital version of it. That makes it extremely easy to just take that digital version and re-upload it for free across the internet. And Zoinks, Scoob, would you believe it, it actually was extremely helpful in growing the comic series. There are so many people out there that wanted to check it out but didn't want to pay $5 for a digital version, didn't want to buy a physical copy. They just wanted to see if it was any good, because who knows, it might have sucked shit through a crazy straw. It might not have been worth the money, so they wanted to check it out, and it was uploaded for free. So there were a lot of people that read it for free and then eventually bought a physical copy once they got invested into the world. I have so many emails like that from people, and that's great. I'm happy that people are checking it out. Even the ones that check it out and don't like it, hey, at least you gave it a try, right? There is really nothing that we lost by having the comic series uploaded for free out everywhere. It's only been helpful. Now, that's not going to be the case for everything, and I totally recognize that. But I really believe all of these efforts made by, like, shutting down emulators, which is what we're about to talk about in detail when it comes to Nintendo, and all of these other, like, DRM efforts and all kinds of anti-piracy measures do nothing but make more people want to pirate it, because you're now ruining the official means of getting these products and making it far more easy, convenient, and complete actually owning the product through piracy. So you're making it a more appealing option for them. So you're creating more problems than you're solving in the first place. I don't want to just regurgitate the same things I said in my last video about this topic. I'm not trying to just Ouroboros my own ass and eat the shit out of it with the same talking points over and over. Basically, last time I was touching on this subject, it was about streaming services being such a massive, expensive headache nowadays where you don't actually own anything anymore and they're constantly censoring episodes or taking things off of their platforms. You have to go on this giant fucking scavenger hunt like you're hunting down the Dragon Balls in order to find, like, the shows or the movies you want. So when you pirate them, it's much easier, it's much quicker, it's a lot less expensive, obviously, and it's just a more convenient service these days, which is why piracy's been blowing up again. Not that I'm advocating for it, of course. You can't come after me for that, Viacom. What I want to focus on with this one isn't so much that, but more so the debate that's breaking out now about emulators, because the global anti-fun police known as Nintendo, the international authority of kicking sand in the face of anyone that's enjoying their products, has decided to launch an attack on a very popular emulator that I'm pretty confident a lot of you are familiar with, called Yuzu. And Nintendo threw the kitchen sink at them. They laid the Super Mario smackdown upon them. Hulkmania went wild, and it was a little concerning for the future of other emulators. RIP to Yuzu. I'm not going to bother going through the particulars of the case. I'll just give you the bare bones gist of it. Nintendo hit them for giving people the tools and information regarding piracy, giving people the ability to pirate Nintendo property, and basically it all just tied into Yuzu and piracy going hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly. Now, let's not get caught in a delusional genjutsu here. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Everyone knows this when it comes to emulators. Anyone that uses an emulator knows that you can get games for free that you don't actually own officially. Not everyone's going to be the person that's dumping the BIOS and all the information out there from their legitimately purchased copy or anything. You can eventually just download it yourself for free and play it through these emulators. But I don't think that means you need to shut everything down in regards to emulators, because they are an invaluable tool when it comes to the preservation of games that otherwise would be lost to time. I am a huge proponent of emulators, and I have been since early high school. In fact, a lot of my early videos are all made through emulators. Mudahar recently made a video covering this topic, and I agree with his take in that when you own something, a piece of hardware, you should be able to do whatever the fuck you want with it. As long as it's not affecting other people and, like, making other people's experience of it negative, it shouldn't matter. So if you legally purchase Tears of the Kingdom for your Switch, but you actually want it to go on your Steam Deck because it's a better console, then you should be able to just, go through the process of getting it to the Steam Deck through the emulators and all the other things that I'm not going to go into detail about because I don't know how Nintendo is going to be responding to all of these things. But there are ways to do it, and I think you should be allowed to. It's not really an ethical dilemma since you own the product legally, you have paid for it. Why not be able to have the freedom and flexibility to take it from its native platform, the Switch, and put it on, like, the Steam Deck or put it on your computer where you can enjoy it far more? And the games are far better there as well. Like, they just are. The Switch fucking sucks as a console. It's archaic. So while Nintendo is correct that there is a lot of piracy when it comes to this emulator sphere, it doesn't mean that it needs to be viewed as, like, this ultimate villain that needs to be defeated, because it offers a lot of good too. Because without emulators, there are so many games that would just be lost to time, especially from Sony, which is something Mudahar also points out. There are so many games that I have played that only exist through being able to be played on emulators that I can't get in an official capacity anymore. So if you're not selling the product anymore and there's no way to have access to it, what is the harm in playing it through an emulator? It's completely victimless crime here. Again, I fully understand that it's not exclusive to just people playing abandonware that you don't get anymore. These old treasures that are, fucking buried under sand and you can only play them through an emulator. I know a lot of people pirate modern games. Like Tears of the Kingdom, people were playing early because it ended up leaking and you were able to play it through the emulator.
So one point I kind of want to make here is, especially when it comes to Nintendo, Nintendo is doing this deliberately. One thing Nintendo loves reselling the same game a dozen different times. Like a big part of their business. Right now, you're watching a video of what is this? Super Mario Galaxy. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite games. But what does Nintendo love to do? Nintendo loves to make you pay for the same thing over and over and over. Okay? So, I mean, you can no longer play Super Mario Galaxy on the Wii or on the Wii U. So, the only way to play Super Mario Galaxy is on the Nintendo Switch. At one point, Nintendo, they basically made it very hard where they were like, okay, we're gonna put out we're gonna put out a limited edition thing where you can get access to Mario 64, Super Mario Galaxy, and Super Mario Sunshine, but it's only going to be for a limited time, and it really was, and that's it. And that basically forces you to pay whatever they want you to pay for old games that came out 20 or even in this case 30 years ago. Okay? 30 years ago. Super Mario 64 is almost 30 years old. It's somewhere around there. It's literally that old. And this is the type of crap that they are doing. And it's never ending. We have right now we have right now we have all these remakes coming out. For example, we have a Paper Mario remake. But the Paper Mario remake looks very much like it's a remake remaster ish. It looks very much like the original, just with slightly HD graphics. So it's really just an HD version of it, but they're calling it a remake. But it's like it's not even really a remake. Metroid Prime got an HD version. That one was really neat. It was it wasn't a remake. They called it a remaster because it was a remaster. And, they updated a lot of the physical assets in it and so forth. But the truth is, with emulation, a lot of people will go in, these decoders will go in, and they'll give you even a superior version where they'll change the assets around and they'll give, you already own the game. And this is what Nintendo hates. They hate your ability. They hate the developer's ability to give you a far superior product. This is something that Moist Critical did mention. You get a far superior product when when you back up the game and then run it on your Steam Deck, and it's going to be better. Playing guys. Why would I even have to pick up? And this is the truth. Why should I have to be bothered with playing my games on playing Breath of the Wild on my Nintendo Switch when I could just bring it over to my Steam Deck, play it on my Steam Deck. The game looks amazing. Now I could finally run the game at 60 frames per second at 1080p, and and it's just unbelievable. Oh no, Nintendo doesn't want you to do that because they want to be able to control the way you play your games as well. So it's gone far beyond them defending their properties, defending their copyright. They're literally trying to violate copyright law by saying that you should not. Their argument is essentially that being able to back up your games is bad for the industry. They don't want you to do that, and they will go to any level to stop you. Where things are ultimately heading is eventually someone will have to stand up to Nintendo. If someone doesn't stand up to Nintendo, then it'll keep on happening. But the moment someone stands up to Nintendo, if Nintendo has such a horrible history now of attempting to prevent people from backing up their games and accessing their games and going after, and Yuzu may have been the final straw, because Nintendo has been so anti consumer protection. They are violating consumer protection laws, and they have such a large history of this that they could face massive fines. And let's make this very, very clear. The United States government loves fines. If they can fine Nintendo for $500,000, well, $500,000, for $250 million, or even $500 million, they absolutely will. They'll find them and they'll put that money in their pockets. The U.S. government loves fines. It doesn't actually care about people, but it does care about money. And if there's enough proof, oh my goodness, Nintendo will end up paying out hundreds of millions, if not possibly well over $1 billion, between the fines that they'll have to pay to the state and then also consumers that have been wronged. Yuzu could potentially even file claims of bullying and harassment, and that they were forced into the settlement. And if it's found that that Nintendo violated these laws, then whatever Yuzu signed, they can go to court and have that nullified. Nintendo would have to repay them whatever they paid them, and they can go after Nintendo for damages. You know, damages to the developers, the individual damages to the persons. I mean, this has been going on for far too long. And Moist Critical talked about this with Sony. Like, there are all these games from the Sony era, and they're gone. There's so many games from even the '80s, and they're gone. Like, all of this media is now gone. And it's basically like, oh, it's your right, it's our right to destroy this media. It's our right that it never exists ever again. Like, are you kidding me? Like, and then the crazy thing is, like, when these companies do these evil things, they'll turn around and they'll try to act like, oh, we're all gamers, we're all fans, we're all geeks and nerds. No, we're not. No, we're not. You're thirsty. You are greedy businessmen who will say and do anything to get our money, and will do anything, and it doesn't matter who you hurt. We are not friends. We are absolutely not friends. And that's something you have to remember. Like, gaming has changed so much over the years. Like, the people that are playing games, most people who play games now are not children. They are grown men and women. Grown men and women. I mean, video games now generate significantly more money than any other industry. It was crazy when, like, we heard about this years ago, that things were going in this direction, and now we're there. This is very, very big business. This is very, very big business. This is not fun. It sounds funny when I say it, but this is not fun in games. You know, and you have to be, like, really, really aware of it. You have to be alert. These people are not your friends. Nintendo is not your friends. It's a business arrangement. It's 100% a business arrangement. I get my games, you get your money, and I have my consumer protections. If you don't like it, then go and change the consumer laws, but don't try to violate them. And that's really the way it is.
A week or two before it officially came out. I get that that's a problem. I 100% understand that. But by taking down and putting your crosshair on emulators themselves, I really just think it's misguided. There are bad actors that are going to use these type of tools for nefarious purposes, of course, and that is an ethical problem. But for me, if I'm playing something through an emulator, I own the real copy of it. At least in every case that isn't a game that no longer fucking exists, which is quite a few of the old PlayStation 2 games that I used to make videos on back in the day. But if I'm playing a more modern game through an emulator, I own that copy in the real world. And since I own that copy, I really feel like I should be able to do whatever the fuck I want with that, because it is mine. Now, I know we live in that age where you don't own anything and you have to be happy about it, but I think that is garbage. I think it's a load of trash, a bunch of hooey. It is yours. You should be able to do whatever the fuck you want as long as it's not hurting other people or ruining someone else's experience.
Now, what's interesting about this, you will own nothing and be happy. These companies are playing a very dangerous game. They're using lawyers and these, oh, well, if you try to sue us, we'll basically drag this thing out in court for years. And, if we lose, yeah, it may cost us a couple $1,000,000. Ha 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 ha. But in the end, you're the one, if we don't lose, then your life is messed up. Like, we've just destroyed your life as an individual. We've cost you tons of money fighting a court case against us. Like, these are evil companies. You have to remember, guys, I went to business school, and one of the lessons we were taught in business is that a company does not have a soul. A corporation does not have a soul. There's this thing, like, it kind of has, like, the same rights as a person in terms of doing business. That's how a company works, but it does not have a soul. Facebook doesn't have a soul. Apple does not have a soul. People view these companies as though they actually have souls. The job of the purpose of a business is to make money for its shareholders. Simply put, Nintendo is trying to prevent gamers from accessing their games, and this is going to be a serious thing. Nintendo could end up facing serious consequences for what they're doing. And I mean, like I said, the only people who end up getting rich during this are the lawyers. But there's a saying like mess around, find out. And that's what Nintendo is doing right now. They're messing around, and I think they're going to find out very soon. As soon as someone stands up to them, and this goes forward, Nintendo will have to make changes. And I will say this: Nintendo is a timid company. I think, even though they are timid, because for example, they are they are literally doing things like saying, okay, well, we're not going to attend events, or we're not going to provide customer service or product support because some people have been very rude to our agents or people who work for us. That's an extreme level of being very, very timid. And so while Nintendo is very willing to go after its consumers, willing to go after anyone who they deem is in their crosshairs, when it comes to actually having to stand up to people and saying, okay, well, now you're going to be punished, and we're going to deal with you, and I think Nintendo will back down a bit. The reason, because it's like they learn very quickly. I think, like, okay, well, guess what? They're going to keep on coming because there's so much ill will. Like, of all the companies out there, Nintendo is the worst of the worst when it comes to violating consumer protections in terms of copyright and what consumers have the rights to do with their software. I mean, guys, not even just software. Just copyright in general. They have taken down so many YouTube videos where someone might, let's say, criticize a game, criticize a Nintendo game, and then what does Nintendo do? Oh, we're going to issue a copyright strike. Like, for example, I'm making this video right now, and I'm showing you footage from Mario Galaxy. Nintendo will literally copyright the video saying that I don't have the right to use this video or show the gameplay because they own the gameplay. They will. These are the types of things that they've done in the past when people have just like made videos criticizing a game or anything along the lines. And of course, what they'll do is they'll go as far as they're like, oh, you have a bunch of videos on our channel where it has footage from our games, so we're going to claim copyrights. We're going to copyright strike every single video on your channel, and hopefully this will get your channel taken down so you won't even have the ability for rebuttal, or it'll create enough stress in your life so that even if you're able to fight back, you're able to keep your channel and it doesn't get taken down. Nintendo, YouTube's not gonna do anything to us. They're gonna say, oh, they're gonna give us a warning like, oh, if you misuse the system, listen, hey, there's a lot of people who do this and blah blah. They're not gonna care. So they're gonna misuse the copyright system however they decide, because no one is going to stop them. No one is going to stand up to them, and no one's going to stop them. No one's going to stand up to them, and they have very, very deep pockets. And in the event that someone does stand up to them, well, then it can drag out for years in court, and it can cost the other party tons and tons of money. But eventually, it's going to happen. I do believe that, and when it does happen, it's going to be just terrible for Nintendo, because they're going to look at it and say, well, did Nintendo intend to do this? Like, does Nintendo, do they know that they were causing harm to the consumer? Does Nintendo have a history of doing this? And yes, they do. They have a terrible history. I mean, like, of doing this with copyright. Like literally, I'm talking about what Nintendo has done and what they're doing regarding copyright. They will literally go after the video just for that and say, oh, and they know that I'm legally able to use this content, to do reviews and commentary. That's how copyrights work. And I can stand up to them quite easily because I don't have a lot of videos on my channel discussing Nintendo or using footage from any Nintendo games. But this is just how insane Nintendo is. And other companies in the US, they don't typically engage in this behavior because there are consequences for doing this, and they also don't want ill will from their consumers. Nintendo, on the other hand, doesn't care about this because they have such a large monopoly when it comes to this media. I don't know, guys. It's sick, but this is the reality we live in. And I honestly hope that Nintendo does get taken to court, and I hope that they have to pay out millions, if not billions, of dollars for doing this type of thing. I want to know your thoughts regarding this in the description. Do you agree? Do you agree that Nintendo could be found guilty for violating copyright law? I want to know your thoughts on this. Let's talk about it in the comments. Like the video, share the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.